Hello, my name is Revell Dixon and welcome to Journey into Arts, a series where I meet artists who are well known in the art sector, hearing about their journey throughout their careers and to hear about the process when it comes to creating new work or projects. Today I am in Southport where I will be meeting Tony Heaton OBE. He is a sculptor and disability rights activist who was appointed OBE for services to the arts and disability arts movement back in 2013.
Well, I always describe myself as a conceptually driven sculptor, which means that I pursue ideas, explore ideas, and then at some point I think about turning them into sculpture of some sort or another. So all my work starts as idea.
What has been your journey into art?
I enjoyed drawing and imagining things when I was a kid. That's what I did all the time. I was always either drawing when the weather was bad and reading. When the weather wasn't bad, I was outside exploring the world, maybe looking at nature mostly. And then I really just kept on doing it. It just became part of my life, really. Sort of compulsion, I suppose, in many ways. So I always think about art. I was always drawing. I was always reading about art. I was always looking at art and talking about art with other people. So it's always been there. I think it helps to ground the ideas, things that you might be thinking about, a way to gather up your thoughts, I suppose. The roots of my interest in art started with people like Henry Moore, from a sculptural point of view, Barbara Hepworth, Henry Moore, that generation of artists who were kind of at the top of their field. People like Tony Cragg, who might carve marble or stone, would interest me. And also all the early Italian marble carvers, I never was interested in that when I was young. But when I started to carve stone and marble, I suddenly realised how difficult it was. And just thought back to, 15th century Florence and, no electric light, no power tools, nothing. How did those artists make those fantastic, wonderful works? Once you try it and you find out how difficult it is, you realise you kind of awaken to the fact that they're really brilliant artists.
What is your process when it comes to creating new work?
Well, I think my process is quite random, really. I don't have a plan. I often make notes. So anything that interests me, I think, oh, that's all right, that's interesting. I'll make a note of that. I keep drawing books, I think everybody does, sketch down ideas and thoughts and you sort of store it up, like a squirrel storing up all these ideas. I think you always start with your interaction with the world and the people in the world. It's that sort of observation of the way the world operates and the conversations you might have with people are things that generate most of my ideas. And when I can't think of anything, I just come in here, get a piece of marble, a hammer and a chisel and just start carving away. It's very cathartic. It's very zen-like, just tapping away. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just tapping away. And suddenly, after a little while, either some form will start to appear or some of my thoughts will start to kind of coalesce into an idea. I might just be looking out the window on a train journey. I love train journeys with a notebook and drawing book. I find that's a really meditative way to get into the zone, to think about processing ideas.
What are the biggest challenges?
We can't do very much without money. Everything costs money. We're just talking about shipping work around the country or abroad. It's really expensive. Materials are expensive. So funding work while staying alive is the real challenge. And I think that's probably true for pretty much all working class artists, We have got to keep ourselves alive and we've got to try and fund our practice and fund our work in some way. I know some of my ideas are much bigger than my budget all the time, So we're kind of constrained into making smaller works when we might want to make much bigger and grander works, but without the funding, it's not possible. So I think that's the biggest challenge for all of us, really.
Show me an object that represents you or relates to your artwork. Can you tell us about it and why is it important to you?
The object that I finally thought about is my wheelchair, because I get in it first thing in the morning, I get out of it last thing at night, and you know, I'm in it almost all the time, and I don't really think about it, but other people do. For me, it's a liberating thing, but I think for a lot of non-disabled people, they see the wheelchair in a very negative way, where I see it in a really positive and empowering way. I couldn't go off the places I go without a good wheelchair, but it's made to measure. It's a bespoke wheelchair. It fits me perfectly. It's lightweight. You know, it does all the things that I need it to do. We do spend a lot of our lives trying to educate the non-disabled about the barriers that they put in our way and how we manage to negotiate the barriers. I made work out wheelchairs, of course. Great Britain from a Wheelchair has been around for 30 odd years. It's one of the earliest pieces that I ever made. And it's basically made out of bits of 2 old wheelchairs. So wheelchairs feature heavily in my world, and I'm glad. It's a good thing.
What is your favourite place to visit?
Focusing on 2 places in Italy that I like the best, and one is Carrara, which is in the northwest of Italy, and of course Carrara is famous for the beautiful marble that's been quarried there since Michelangelo's day, for over 2,000 years. The Romans carved, extracted the marble using slaves all those years ago, 2,000 odd years ago. And so I like Carrara. It's not a touristy town. It's kind of an honest working town. Most of the industry is based around marble or fishing, and because it's quite near to the beach. But then the mountains pretty high up in Carrara. I go there. It's beautiful mountain air, and that's where all this marble comes from that you see around you. And I just really enjoy carving marble in Carrara in Italy. It's kind of the best thing to do. But I also love Venice, which is on the east side of Italy. And again, I like it for different reasons. I just think culturally it's a really interesting place to be. It's a nightmare from an access point of view because there's bridges over canals everywhere you look, there's bridges. So it's physically difficult getting on and off Vaporetto and travelling around. But it's just a different place. It's just a kind of unique part of the world, and I love going there as well. So Italy would be my favourite destination.
If you weren't an artist, what would you be?
Well, I'd have to be a different person if I wasn't an artist, because it's all bound up together. I think life and art is kind of one thing. So if I wasn't an artist, I don't know what I'd be, because I don't see art as being a job or a career. It's kind of a way of living. So I've got no idea. I mean, I've done lots of different jobs. When I was chief exec at Shape, for instance, and I've done, I used to be a record retailer. I've worked in factories. I can't even remember half the things I've done to make money. I've done signwriting, printing, Usually there's been an element of creativity wrapped up in the work that I've done. But all the way through that, the thread has always been thinking about art, making art. So I always think I'm an artist first. Sometimes I'm an artist who needs to make money to pursue art, to pay to go to Carrara or buy marble or buy tools and equipment. But I fundamentally work so that I can continue being an artist. So I don't know what I'd be if I wasn't an artist. I wouldn't be an artist. I don't know. I think for me, making sculpture's kind of crazy idea, really, because it's heavy, it's difficult. When it needs to move anywhere, it's a massive logistical nightmare. Getting trucks with tail lifts on them, carting work in and out, trying to protect it so it doesn't get damaged. It's difficult. I wish I was making film. I could just email off to people sometimes. I think you're hot-wired to do the work that you do, So you kind of do the stuff that you're interested in, and that's how your ideas coalesce as an artist.
What's the one thing you would change about the visual arts sector?
Well, the arts are very class-bound still. The arts are very elitist and conservative with a small c sector. And it's still run on status and privilege. And because of that, it's still very, very difficult for working class people to be engaged in it, or outsiders. I think there's a tokenistic and superficial engagement with disabled artists. But I think the one thing I'd change would be to make it more democratic, to have more inclusion of disabled artists or people from so-called minorities. I think breaking through that would make the arts more interesting. I mean, if you're interested in making art and pursuing ideas, then you just get on and do it. And one of the things that I'm always surprised by is the amount of artists who've just been working away for years and years and years that nobody's ever heard of them, and they don't care. You know, they're not really that interested. They're still driven to make their work. I was thinking particularly about Frank Auerbach, who's died just recently, and you know, he just painted all the time. You know, he never went on holiday. He worked really long days, and he was just completely and utterly absorbed with painting. You know, the act of painting was so interesting and absorbing that he didn't really want to do anything else. There's a lot of business wrapped up in being an artist that people don't think about. They think it's just about coming in your studio and making your work, you know, going home and chilling out, and it's not like that at all. You know, a huge amount of time is kind of wasted and spent doing all those peripheral things that you've got to do to sustain your practice. I think the problem is the people who hold the power and the rank don't see that. They don't see the art that I'm interested in as being as interesting as I see it, I guess. So we just need to shake up their thinking. Some artists are managing to do that, but there's a long way to go to break through that conservatism and that elitism.
How can people stay connected with Journey into Arts? People can stay connected by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. From there, they can watch all the latest videos and be alerted for when new videos get uploaded onto the channel.